This episode of the only podcast about movies was recorded a little differently. Shahir was off-site, and therefore, we didn't sync up as much as we usually don't. So if you hear any audio glitches or the occasional out-of-syncnitude, that's a word, just ignore it. Just like you did that time you heard your parents having sex. Also, it's worth noting, I'm incredibly hungover, so I'm probably going to sound like a huge dummy. Enjoy the show. What is up, Internet? It doesn't make a difference. Men, artists, animals, plants, we're all just extras. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And as we know, intellectuals have no taste. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about the film Youth. We are finally doing it, Shahir.
We are. I'm excited to, because you are so enthusiastic about this film. And I have to admit, this is and please don't, mistake this. It's an unusual movie for you to be excited about.
Oh, shut up.
No, I mean that in the most endearing way, don't you think?
No. It is out of my wheelhouse, except the small wheelhouse it sort of inhabits for me is Michael Caine.
Oh, great.
I like everything that man does, so that was sort of my gateway into this film to get me there and get me interested and excited.
Sure.
But yeah, I've watched it twice now, and it just got fucking better. And we can get into it in a little bit, obviously, this being the only podcast about the film.
Well, sure. Why don't we, just before we do that, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping, catch up on a couple of emails. As always, if you like our show, if you want to share information with us, if you want to write us in, tell us how much of a douchebags we're being this week, you can do so.
Singular. Yeah.
At onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. I just wanted to shout out to Kartik Singh, who is writing us from France. I know this because I met Kartik at a film festival a couple of years ago at Clermont-Ferrand, where
nice.
he was a very, very helpful host. Took us out to dinner, ordered French food for us, and it was really great. He's a terrific filmmaker on his own as well, so check him out at luminoustudios.com, or Kartik Singh, Kartik Singh, Singh. And he wrote this in. One rule that I have is that I never listen to an episode until I've actually seen the film in question, so I have lots of them to catch up with. I just listened to your Anomalisa episode, which was my number one favorite film. Glad you guys got a Japanese friend to translate the song, and I really enjoyed the Star Wars revisits. He's got a nice little plug here about how good chemistry we have, Matt. I'm going to skip that because I don't want us to sound too masturbatory right now.
Misty-eyed.
But one comment he mentioned here was that we both took a gigantic shit on Sicario, which he liked a lot. He made this interesting comment, which is, I was perfectly fine with Emily Blunt taking a backseat in the second half of the film. Spoilers for Sicario. In general, I feel this hero's journeys bullshit has harmed movies and made them all feel the same.
Ooh.
So what do you think about that, thinking back about our Sicario review?
I mean, well, first of all, thank you for the email. And second of all, I'm trying to think back to Sicario, but I'm glad he enjoyed it, but it didn't stick with me. So I'm trying to think back.
Sure. Well, while you're doing that, I'll tell you what I think, which is that Kartik, it's an interesting thing, which is that Sicario is a film that I didn't enjoy that much because of exactly the reason you mentioned, which was that Emily Blunt's character kind of gets lost in the second half of the film. And I think in the review, we talked a lot about why that didn't work in Sicario versus why that worked in a film like No Country for Old Men. The thing is right now is, the more I think about Sicario, the more I really want to give it a second shot, maybe because I listen to the soundtrack a lot on my headphones. So Sicario might be a film I could be wrong about, but that was my initial, I still stick by my initial feelings, which was that the second half of the film, while excellent, does an unusual narrative turn that undermines what was good about the first half.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree with the hero's journey sort of ruining things. Not everything has to be about the one person doing the thing and changing and growing and whatever, or that sort of thing. I know that's the sort of the standard, but something actually in the film we're going to talk about today in Youth, I feel like where Youth does it very well and Sicario didn't, and is basically having an ensemble of characters, having them all be interesting and not forwarding certain they don't all sort of further the same plot, but they just, like in Youth, they all seem to work together. And you could argue that while Michael Caine's is sort of the head, the main character, like there are tons of other strong characters that you could, if you spent 5 more minutes with of screen time, they could be the main character. So I think what the difference with Sicario was, and this actually might have to do with its advertising seeping into my brain a little too much, because it was sort of painted as this thing where Emily Blunt was the, I don't know, in the marketing or whatever, was kind of the hero of the movie, and I kind of got used to that idea.
Yeah.
And then seeing it and sort of having it be the first half of that movie be just that, and then the second, well, maybe the first 2/3 and the last third just take such a detour. Kind of threw me out. So I think it just didn't set up its sort of odd choice enough for me. So when it took the turn that it did, it just threw me off the bus.
Yeah, I kind of agree in a slightly different way, which is that I think that the turn doesn't inform the not messaging is the wrong word, but it doesn't inform the story that the film is trying to tell, and it kind of because I'm sort of confused then by the last scene where Emily Blunt's character hasn't really realized what's happened. So I kind of found that unusual. But again, Kartik, I actually did really enjoy Sicario. It made my top 10 list of last year, and I do there's a lot of movies where I say I never want to see that again, Jurassic World. But Sicario is one where I'm like, I kind of do want to give that a second shot, and maybe my mind will change. I'll keep you updated if it does.
I would watch it again.
Yeah.
I think I would too. It does do a lot of stuff right.
Yeah, look, it's a masterfully made film. I just think it made such an unusual choice that it threw me. It was one of those unusual narrative choices that threw me out of the movie.
100%.
Kartik, I also just wanted to thank you for mentioning that he doesn't listen to the podcast until he's seen the film in question.
Yes,
listeners,
we've been debating this.
Yeah, we are trying out a sort of a release strategy, if you will, and you can advise us if this works for you or not. But we're trying a thing where we release the podcast at least 1 week after the film has been released, if we're doing a new release film. If you've gathered, we do film. We try not to restrict ourselves to what's playing at the movies. We will do a film like Youth, which has been out on Blu-ray or on iTunes for a while now. Today, because we like it. We do short films on occasion. We do feature films. We might even do, an old school, a classic film at some point, because we kind of, this podcast, we're the only podcast, and we want to cater to our own whims, and yours, listeners. But the thing with new releases that that I think is interesting is that we want to give everyone at least 1 week to watch that film and then come to us, because our discussions tend to be long and involved. So even though we do a little bit of the discussion as spoiler free, we're hoping that you're coming to us to listen to two idiots, if you will, ramble on incoherently about a film and hopefully get something out of it.
Yeah, I mean, so you've been warned. You have 1 week normally to see the film before we will actually put something out. The reason I wanted to talk about Youth this week was because the Oscars just happened.
Yeah, what an interesting. Night. I say interesting because I don't watch the Oscars, and we decided we were going to talk a little bit about the Oscars, and I struggled to come up with rationalities to why the Oscars are relevant.
I mean, I was reading all of the articles about the Oscars after the fact, and I was, blah, 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 blah. And there's all the, there's tons of stuff, obviously wrong with the Oscars. And then there was reviews of the night. And then people thought that the things that were wrong were undercutting. I don't know. I feel like it's been picked apart so much that I don't particularly care.
Yeah.
Again, I know everyone's probably really wondering if I'm going to blow up about Spotlight. No, I'm not. I'm disappointed. Well, no, see, here's why. This is why I'm not going to blow up about Spotlight, is because I think time and time again, the Oscars are just slowly chipping away and proving that they don't matter. And they're kind of doing it to themselves. Now, that's not to say that the films that won the awards across the board don't deserve them. Many of them do. I mean, Revenant and Mad Max and what was the other one? The other big winner of the night. I'm trying to remember.
I'm not too sure, actually. I think it was kind of split after that. I think The Big Short picked up a couple of awards.
Amy, best documentary, like that sort of stuff. That was all, these are all great films. And again, I will say, if you liked Spotlight, great. I'm glad you did, because someone has to. But I just don't think, especially in a year where this film, Youth, that we're going to discuss at great length, came out, and it only got nominated for song. The Simple Song number 3 in the film got nominated for Best Original Composition, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I just look at it and I'm like, wow, like you're just not, I don't know. And this movie, I feel like, well, I'll get into why I don't think it won or was even nominated for Oscars later. But it blows my mind that they just seem very out of touch with everything.
Well, here's what I have a sort of counter theory to that, which is that in some ways I think the Oscars can be actually negative to a film. Like, so for example, because here's what I think. I think the Oscars, in a way, if a film wins Best Picture, that pretty much puts a full stop on the discussion about that film. Like, for example, we don't talk about The Artist anymore. Maybe there's a distinction between what the awards hands out and what pop culture kind of picks up on. Now, I am not disappointed that Spotlight won, because I think Spotlight is an excellent movie. I am a little disappointed that maybe the conversation that Spotlight generates will cease at this point. Like people just go, oh yeah, that was the best picture. It was okay. Let's move on.
I made a snarky comment on Facebook after the fact, basically congratulating Spotlight and apologizing to movie trivia people at bars around the country a year from now when they ask who won Best Picture last year and no one can remember. That's what's going to happen. And again, not that I shouldn't, because it's funny. I again think it's an average film, but you're absolutely right. Like these movies that sort of win don't tend to, you're right. The conversation just stops.
It can do for a lot of films, not everyone. And I think I said in our review of Spotlight that for me, Spotlight would be the film to beat in any ordinary year. And it turns out it was. But I did kind of hope that Mad Max would win, just because it would be such a statement by the Oscars to pick a film like Mad Max. But I don't disagree with their decision. But again, who cares as well?
That's the thing.
It's great. It's wonderful. I hope one day, I could be on that stage, but at the same time, like, does it matter, for the legacy of the film itself? I don't know. I don't think so. And having seen awards being handed out and even being behind the scenes on sometimes, like seeing how awards are decided sometimes, it is like, it's a crapshoot and it's all made up,
Yeah. Well, now this is the only podcast about conspiracies because everything is rigged.
I don't know if it's rigged. It's just made up,
No. Well, I'm just saying what I meant by rigged is like there's so many deals and things and you're right, just made up. People just decide shit because of A, B, C, D, and E, and those things can be anything.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
It's not like a math problem where there's an actual like full answer. It's just like, oh, I think this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Oscars, show was fine. Chris Rock did good. Glad some movies got some awards, and sad someone did too. So it's fine. Whatever.
Any thoughts on, before we move on Oscars So White, hashtag Oscars So White, or diversity, Chris Rock's monologue or anything? Because I think that was the most interesting thing about the Oscars.
Ask the white guy on the show about what I think about the diversity.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you can't talk about the subject.
I think, again, when we talked about it a little bit before, I think a ton of people got snubbed that should not, or that said should have been nominated. I think if certain people wanted to boycott, then I think that's totally fine.
I think Chris Rock said it best when it was like, remember in the 60s when Oscars, when no black people were nominated? That's because and nobody protested. It's because we had real things to protest about. I think that was a very, very astute and funny moment.
Yeah, but it's such a, even though we're just talking about them and we're saying like, oh, they don't matter. It's still the biggest popularity contest in town. And it's what it's what a lot of people that don't think about movies more than just going on a Saturday night. The only other time people think of an award for a film is the Oscars. Like, that's what the common people know. Oh, did that movie win an Oscar? Then it should be good. Like, that's the lexicon, that's the dialect that people have. So to just and it seems so I mean, now I'm gonna go on a rant. It seems so arbitrary. Like, Straight Outta Compton should have been nominated like 3 or 4 things. Beast of No Nation, the little kid in that should have been nominated.
Yeah,
Idris Elba, I think, should have at least been nominated. Fucking and don't get me wrong, I love Sly Stallone.
Yeah,
I love him.
Yeah,
but Michael B. Jordan, right? That's Creed's name. In Creed was so fucking good.
Yeah,
like it's this perfect shitstorm of like, how do you look at this when you're in your room and you're looking at the tally and be like, are these really what we think? Like,
yeah, and if you compare that to the previous year when 12 Years a Slave kind of swept, you're basically painting a picture where there's a certain kind of blackness that is accepted and a certain kind of blackness which is not. And I think that's kind of more telling than anything, because I don't think it's that the Oscars are racist per se. That's a very strong word to throw out there. But I think that there is a generally accepted kind of blackness versus an unaccepted kind. And if you look at the unaccepted kind, it was the modern,
Chris Rock said that they're sorority racist, which I think is totally true. Like,
and it's not just African Americans as well. It's a whole range of things. And I think, to me, the problem with the Oscars isn't the Oscars itself. It's the fact that so few films that aren't white don't actually get as much publicity, because I think the biggest problem is this theory that goes around, which is that black movies, for example, need to be marketed to black audiences because they're the ones that'll watch it, versus, like, that to me is like really problematic and telling of a bigger issue. And then I think all of that gets filtered down to when, the Oscar season comes around, because, those films don't get marketed as much, and they don't get as much publicity, so they're not seen, and then they're not put up for awards.
The Oscars is a symptom. It's not the disease itself. And, hopefully in the next coming years that they'll rectify it.
One of the greatest American films in the last 25 years, Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee, didn't get a single nomination, but Six Lies and Videotape, which came out the same year, which is an excellent film, did. And, I don't think we'll, from a pop culture point of view, talk about Six Lies and Videotape very much, but Do the Right Thing is so prescient today and so important today that it's kind of sad that the film didn't get recognized. But again, if the film had been recognized, it might have put a full stop on that conversation. Yeah,
I guess.
So, Youth, though.
Getting back to Youth, the movie that should have been Picture of the Year.
So this is again, I think I mentioned it before, this is an unusual film for you to champion. This is the kind of film I would ordinarily champion, I think.
I know. I feel dirty, but I don't feel dirty because this whole film is genius. I was watching it the second time, and holy crap. Like, I was thinking about it. I was taking notes. I think I took way more notes than I normally do.
Great.
This time around. And but what I took away from taking all these notes was I can't understand this movie as much as I want to. Like, I'm going to have to watch it to get all of the meanings and the deeper sort of behind the scenes sort of why things are where. I'm going to have to watch this movie like 10, 15 times, and I'm fine with that. Like,
you want to watch it 10, 15 times, right?
Yeah, it's, I got the gist the first time I watched it, and I loved it, and then the second time I got a little bit deeper, and some of the problems, and I did have 1 or 2 problems, which we'll talk about too, that I had on the first viewing. Upon the second viewing, I was like, oh, well, that all makes total fucking sense now.
Right.
And then the argument, well, we'll talk about it a little bit later. The argument is, does it still work if it doesn't deliver on the first sort of thing? But whatever.
So for anyone who's listening in who wants to watch this film, the film Youth by Paolo Sorrentino is available on iTunes now. It stars Michael Caine and Harvey Keitel as Fred Ballinger and Mick Boyle, 2 longtime friends who spend a season in a Swiss Alp resort, both wrestling with the fact that their best years may be behind them, and dealing with the notion of what the future might hold. Fred Ballinger has just recently, at the very start of the film, has been asked to perform his signature composition, He's a film
composer.
He's a composer. His signature composition, "Simple Song," which was nominated for an Oscar, for the Queen's royal performance with Prince Philip. Meanwhile, Mick Boyle is a film director who has brought a team of screenwriters to the resort to help him pen what he feels might be his greatest film, his testament, if you will.
Yes.
Life's Last Song. Good title, too.
Life's Last Day.
Life's Last Day. Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
And this is directed by Paolo Sorrentino, who won the Oscar for Best Foreign Film last year, The Great Beauty, and is part of that Italian renaissance that is going on right now. There are a few films. Now, spoiler alert for my opinion of this film.
Yeah, no, I gave mine. You give yours. I showed you mine.
Well, I'm going to, look, Matt, I'm very happy that you really like this film. And I know that's going to sound a little condescending, and I hope it doesn't come across condescending, but this is kind of a film that's in my wheelhouse that you are passionate about. And I'm really, I'm kind of taken aback by that. I don't necessarily agree. And I don't think that this film necessarily deserves that kind of accolade, but I think there is so much going on in this film, and it is so just first off, this film is so beautiful. It is extraordinary to look at. The cinematographer, I think his name is, I had it up on my screen a second ago, but Luca Biazzi, I think his name is, I'll get that in a second, is so gorgeous that you watch this on the biggest screen you possibly can. Yeah. And it's cinema with a capital C. And it's so sensuous as well. It's just worth watching on that level. I think narratively, the film is a little hollow, but as part of this Italian Renaissance, there are a couple of films that I love. There was a film called The Last Kiss, which was remade into a film with Zach Braff, by the way, which I heard was awful. But the actual original Italian film, The Last Kiss, is just stunning. And possibly one of my favorite films of the last 10 years, a film called I Am Love with Tilda Swinton, is, to quote Malcolm from, Alex from A Clockwork Orange, is gorgeous and gorgeosity defined. I Am Love. And Matt, I think, like how I did with Steve Buja.
Hey, you got it right.
I did get it right this time, which was to give you if you liked this film, I think you'll enjoy this. Check out I Am Love, directed by Luca Guadagnino. That to me is a film I could watch at the drop of a hat anytime, and it captivated me from start to finish. I can see why this film would captivate you, though. And I'm glad it did. If you become enraptured with this film, which I can totally see happening, then I absolutely could see why you would champion this film. As I say, I personally don't. I think the film is a beautiful series of vignettes that are all fairly interesting, but I'm not entirely certain that it's the sum of more. It's more than the sum of its parts.
Oh, I think it is, my friend.
Well, shall we get into spoiler territory?
Yeah, we probably should. So spoilers coming in hot. But even before then, I have one more thing. I'm not even sure if this is sort of a spoiler thing. I think what I love, beyond the fact that it's gorgeous and its soundtrack is amazing and the shots are all framed like goddamn paintings.
Yeah, every frame is a painting in this film.
It's so fucking good. Side note, actually, some of the more static stuff reminded me of sort of set pieces from Pigeon a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Which is just sort of, I noticed that in the second time. But the things that always get me to come back to movies are characters. Beyond what the thing looks like or what it's about or, and all of the bits and pieces. If a film has compelling and believable in whatever space they are characters that feel real to me and that I am interested in, I will love the film forever. And what this movie does, and fuck, I'll tie it back to the goddamn Avengers early. It's
oh god,
it's
really?
All these different characters in youth. I feel like if you took them and they were like cards in a deck, right?
Yeah.
You shuffle them together and put just scenes with them, no matter what, And the movie does this to a point, but like, because every once in a while you'll see two new people talking that you didn't even know had a rapport, and then there's a thing happening. But I'm convinced you could take any of these characters, shuffle them in a deck, and pull out like two groups of 2s and 3s and have the most phenomenal scenes and conversations and dialogue. Much
Sure.
like, in a different way, the characters in the Avengers, I like the fact that when they are put together in weird, different scenarios, new things come from them.
Right.
But
it's odd that you went there right away, but okay.
Yeah, I just thought I'd get it out of the way.
Yeah.
So you could take me more seriously as we continue down the road. But the characters in this movie are amazing. Like Michael Caine obviously is great in it, but everyone, Harvey Keitel, even the young guy, Paul Dano.
Yeah,
who plays Paul Dano's character is Jimmy Tree, and this resort they're all at is sort of like this in the Swiss Alps, is it?
Yeah, I think it's the Swiss Alps. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like celebrities go to this resort for like vacation, and you can kind of see why. It's a beautiful location.
Man, I wish we could record from that. The whole time we were watching it, I was like, I wish we could record from this location.
Oh my God, it'd be so good. But he plays Jimmy Tree. Paul Dano plays Jimmy Tree, and not only does Paul Dano, hang with the big boys in this movie, like legends of acting, but he sort of plays, I guess, what I would call like a Johnny Depp type character, like
Sure.
not like a Captain Jack, but like actually Johnny Depp, like an actor who's super into the craft and is questioning sort of the roles that he's taken in his life. And I forget how I even started talking about him.
Well, you were mentioning that he plays, like he goes toe to toe with Michael Caine and Harvey Keitel in this movie.
So everyone in this film, all their characters are wonderful. And something that took me, that I think that one of the main things that grabbed me in this, and I got to go back to my notes, because this movie, if you feel me getting sort of stumbled, it's because I don't think I 100% get what this movie is trying to say.
Sure.
But I think it really wants me to, and I think it does an excellent job sort of leading the viewer. I think if I had to put a sort of a pin in what this movie is about, after all is said and done, and we can go through the sort of minutia of what happens, I think the point that this movie is trying to say is that if you just shut up and get over yourself, getting old or changing doesn't have to kill you.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. Certainly with the title and the two lead actors.
Right. But every character in this movie, and it's funny, I was going through and I was like trying to figure out like, well, what something that makes all the characters very nuanced and feel very real is they all have sort of like, I guess, accolades in their life and shit that they don't like in their life. Like they feel real. It feels balanced. Yeah. And obviously the older characters have more shit in their life because they've lived longer.
Yeah.
In a weird way. But like I was trying to think of like who the happiest people were in the movie, and one of them was a young masseuse.
Yeah, the masseuse, yeah, who seems to be,
who in her downtime plays Just Dance on the Xbox, I think it is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But and even like the Michael Caine has a daughter played by Rachel Weisz, who seems like all good in the beginning, and then her husband leaves her for a pop star, which then sort of breaks her, and she gets rebuilt. Sort of, she has to find herself again through the loving arms of Luca,
of a climber,
the climber.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like I'm talking in circles about this thing because there's so much to fucking dissect from it.
Well, here's the thing, Matt. You said something earlier, which was that you feel like you haven't wrapped your head around the film completely, and it's great that you want to go back to the well and try to figure this film out. I personally think that the reason you might be struggling to come to grips with the film is again, I don't think that the sum is more than, I don't think this film is more than the sum of its parts, which is that it has really lovely, well-written, considered scenes which all dance around the topic of getting older and one's legacy. But I don't think it actually eventually comes to anything about it. To me, what this film feels like is basically a retreat. This film is a respite from daily life, and it takes a retreat from life and to examine the possibilities of what one's life meant. And I think there are some interesting things that are said, but if you break down what Michael Caine's revelation is about his life, it's not that revelatory. It's interesting, and I think it's very well done, but it didn't like knock me off my feet.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to go back to the email from before about sort of like the hero's journey mentality.
Sure.
And that's why I think this movie, I know Michael Caine is the main character. I get that. But I don't think his journey or his story is the point of the movie. I think if this movie's trying to say something about sort of basically the human condition and aging, and we're all going to die no matter what we fucking do.
Yeah.
And this movie has so many different characters in different points of their life dealing with that fact in very different ways. In fact, there's a scene. Maybe I'll finish this point before I jump to the next one. So excited.
So excited.
Michael Caine's character he's a set in his ways guy. He's fucked up a lot in his life. He sacrificed his family life for his music. And his daughter is bitter about it, even though she's now his assistant.
Yeah, which is yeah.
But that relationship, the relationship between Michael Caine and Rachel Weisz in the film, felt very real to me too, because it felt like an actual parentage. Like they were happy and they had happy moments, and then like the second that shit starts hitting the fan, like the daughter like lashes out, and rightfully so, at her father, Michael Caine. And then they sort of like get over it because they're close in a weird way. Like it felt like when characters argued in this film, then and a couple other times, once with Harvey Keitel and Jane Fonda as well, which we'll talk about later, it felt like an actual real argument to me and a fight. Like a lot of times there's like screaming and then people walk away in movies, or a physical fight starts, or any of that shit. Every confrontation in this film felt so real because it had its peaks and valleys. It's sort of 1-2 punches back and forth, sort of sparring. And then even after sort of the final blow was dealt, it keeps going because life just keeps fucking going, right? Like it's not like you say one thing and then dramatically the whole thing ends in real day-to-day life. And in this movie, it does that. It just keeps like the winner of the argument hits their final like word punch, but then like it keeps going to sort of show you what actually happens after these large conversations. So that was just one more thing in this movie that sort of in the soup that this movie is that sort of made me really appreciate sort of the realness of these characters in kind of like weird sort of imagination land. They have a lot of either dreams or things that happen in the movie that are like just a little bit beyond realistic. I would say that most of the things in the film, like when Michael Caine goes and sits in the field with the cows.
Yeah.
You remember that?
That's a gorgeous scene.
Yeah. He like starts basically conducting nature in a weird way. And in the movie, it plays out like he's actually conducting the woodpeckers and the bees and the cows and stuff like that. And like just musically, like the noises they make.
It's a beautiful scene.
Yeah. I took that. I didn't think in the actual world of the movie he was actually doing that. That was just him sort of imagining the feeling of what it was like when he composed. And since he has decided to not compose any more music or play certain songs from his catalog anymore due to his wife basically being catatonic.
Yeah.
They kind of set her up as being dead throughout the entire film, but turns out she's actually like in a hospice in Venice, I think it was.
Yeah. I mean, like, look. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's lots of moments that are surreal, but they're either dreams or sort of like what you think the character's feeling in their head, sort of thrown at you beautifully visually on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's part of the, look, we go back to Fellini, the Italian tradition of it's not quite surrealism, but the magical realism, the blending of the real and the imagination to which are interchangeable as far as cinema goes, because the idea that cinema is a dream, which I think Fellini really tapped into, and I think this film is certainly in that tradition. Paolo Sorrentino is a filmmaker who I know is much lauded in Italy. He's probably Italy's premier filmmaker, having won the Oscar for Best Foreign Film last year. Mm-hmm. He's right up there with the guy who made The Last Kiss, who went on to become Will Smith's guy in Hollywood, who made 7 Pounds in The Pursuit of Happiness. going blank on his name, but there is this tradition of Italian film that uses surreal imagery. Gabriele Muccino is the other filmmaker. So for me, that scene where Michael Caine is playing, orchestrating in the field perfectly fits in this movie as far as this entire retreat in the Swiss Alps feels like a dream. It feels almost like they could be in some kind of purgatory. And the thing that's interesting there,
it kind of is in a weird way.
The thing that's interesting there that I was sort of intrigued by is that a film like this would sets up this extraordinarily world of privilege and wealth, but doesn't actually make any commentary about that. I mean, the film kind of reminded me of Renoir's film, The Rules of the Game, and maybe Robert Altman's film, Gosford Park, which is it sort of starts. It starts by setting you up in this world of extraordinary privilege, counterbalanced with the working class that's beneath them. You see the workers at the resort kind of getting ready and preparing. But the film, unlike Gosford Park and The Rules of the Game, the film makes no commentary about that. And that is unusual, given that we live in the age of Occupy Wall Street, the 1%, the 99%.
I think it does actually make comment to it. It doesn't verbally sort of say like. It doesn't make a scene out of it, but it definitely, how do I put it? Like you see the workers getting ready and you see them sort of helping these elderly rich people around. Some elderly, not everyone. I mean, hell, Miss Universe eventually goes there.
Yeah.
But you see them sort of in their downtime a lot too, like the masseuse who dances and I guess there was like a sad prostitute somewhere.
Yeah, I think she's like, as far as the film making commentary, the sad prostitute is the kind of as far as it goes, which it has and it's lovely. It's really well done. There is a young girl who she looks like she comes from a Todd Solondz film. She looks like she comes from Welcome to the Dollhouse. Yeah. Walks into this resort every night, kind of mournfully with her mother, and waits and she waits for men to come pick her up, who tend to be like much, 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 much older. And so it's older men kind of finding a young woman. And look, I guess what I'm saying is that in any other film, without the kind of dreamlike imagery that goes along with this film, that would be lecherous, and there would be perhaps more of a discussion in the film about the power dynamic that's happening. And again, this is a film where very wealthy people are basically indulging their very wealthy habits on screen, and the film makes no commentary about it.
Well, I don't think,
I don't think the film needs to make it. It's what's remarkable about it is I don't think the film needs to make a commentary about it, and I don't think the film intends to make a commentary about it. And it's amazing that it, despite that, that actually didn't bother me a lot. It kind of felt like this was just a lovely world, and this is the way the world operates. And I kind of actually enjoyed that. For example, that other film that I mentioned, I Am Love, is actually set in a similar universe of very wealthy, powerful people. But it does actually make a commentary about the people that support these wealthy people. And I think that's what that film was about. And this film is not about that. It's just unusual to me that, we live in the age, and it's perhaps because I'm middle class and so are you, Matt, that the film somehow manages to skirt above that feeling, like imagine if we were watching any other film that was perhaps not as well made, which was about rich people indulging their richness on a retreat. And, we might go, oh, well, this is just really a film about wealthy people doing their thing. And do I really care? I think it's kind of remarkable that the film skirts above that whole line. In the same way, I think the film skirts above it's really teeing the line of slightly misogynistic is the wrong word, but leery old man kind of pervy old man kind of thinking, because there's a Miss Universe character turns up.
Hold on,
halfway
let's stop because I gotta go back to what you're saying before you put a pin in that. We'll get that in a second.
Okay. I guess
going back to the rich thing real quick.
Yeah.
I want to let you finish that thought before I interrupted.
Well, I guess in the same way, all I just wanted to say was that it's remarkable that the film is playing in that world without making commentary about those things, and it doesn't need to. I think this is actually a positive on the film, that it's so, the director's voice and his eye on his subjects is so empathetic that it doesn't even become a factor, even though it is it's a strange world that we're visiting.
It doesn't become a factor is that it's not a factor. I mean, I think, to be honest, the only reason it takes place, other than the fact that it's pretty in the Swiss Alps, the only reason it takes place basically during rich people at a retreat is a couple different factors. One, if your whole thing is about reflection of sort of the human existence, with little to no distractions, it's going to be really hard to do that, telling a story of basically people that are like working constantly. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to do this slow sort of, I think the classism that the film uses is just an excuse to be like, make you not question why these people can sit around and sort of have these moments trying to figure out what the hell their lives mean. Well, you know what I mean? It's a convenience.
I agree with you. I think it and don't get me wrong here. I'm not suggesting that the fact that film is not in the film is a bad thing. It's amazing that the film didn't make me question that too much. But what I'm saying is that if you were watching a lesser made film, the fact that this film is about an actor has an actor wandering around trying to figure out a role basically by doing nothing all day would probably make you a little annoyed in any other film. And it doesn't in this film, and I think it's kind of interesting that it doesn't.
Well, I think the fact in that thing is just like, for instance, that actor, Jimmy Tree, isn't doing nothing all day. He goes to these stupid retreat meeting things or these concerts that they have to talk when, he's not doing something. Like, you never see a person work in this movie.
No.
It's all about the time. Oh, yeah, apart from the director and his writers. But even then, that's all still sitting around and talking about doing the work. You never see anybody write.
Oh, I wish I could write like that. Like, I wish my writing sessions were like that.
Yeah. So this movie is all about the in-between moments, the moments where you have time to sort of sit and reflect or talk with a friend or whatever. It's not, I think that's the whole point of it. And that's sort of why it's portrayed in this sort of way. And then also to hit your sort of pervy old man, continue on that thought. I wanted to see where you were going.
Well, I think the film kind of, again, it teeters on that line of pervy old man, but it manages to get away with it because, again, the director's eye is so empathetic and so non-judgmental. But this has a kind of a scene in this film where a beautiful woman kind of just walks around naked in slow motion. And it's kind of a strange, unusual scene because it has nothing to do with the film and it has nothing to do with anything that the characters are thinking about in the film.
It has everything to do with the film. Why do you think that scene had no point?
I don't think that scene really plays out in any meaningful way, other than it just happens.
Okay,
but here's the thing. It has that kind of Italian way of portraying sexuality, which is classic masculine and femininity, and without shying away from classic masculinity and femininity. So it's a film that, without it somehow manages to avoid objectifying her. Rather, it seems to be celebrating her in an unusual way, in much the same way Fellini did in 8.5 with women.
Well, it's yes and no. And I don't think it's in a weird way. I guess it's celebrating her, but it's more celebrating, I think. So the two guys, Harvey Keitel and just to set the scene, Harvey Keitel and Michael Caine are in like I guess it's like a heated type of pool where you can like go towards the heating coils and like you could. I've never been in one of those. It's like a spa pool, right?
Right.
And Miss Universe walks up, and she's naked, and she walks in, and she does the whole slow-mo thing and whatever. And it's sort of a weird scene because Michael Caine and Harvey Keitel don't know what the fuck to do. They're just sort of like, But so here are these two 80-something-year-old men, and at first you're like, I do think, Shahir, I was like, why is this happening? This doesn't make any sense to me. But then the more I thought about it, and then finally when someone comes over to tell Mick, Harvey Keitel's character, that Jane Fonda is there to see him, he's like, excuse me, sir, someone's here to see you. And he goes, can't you see we're having I forget the word he used, but can't you see we're having the last great, like, tickle or something of our lives or something like that? Like the thrill. Let's just use the word thrill because that's kind of what it meant. Yeah. He says, can't you see we're having the last thrill of our life? Which, if you think about it, I mean, not to get super, I don't know, psychological about sort of sex and what it means or whatever, but like part of being a human man, I guess, or whatever, a human, that's a huge sort of telling thing about age. Because I imagine when you get to be 80, very little sexually excites you anymore, if that makes any sense. This movie's all about sort of how life changes and your perspective of life changes as you age. This one scene sort of just happened to be about like the fact, like, they're both literally shocked in that moment. I think that they are aroused in a weird way. And I also think, but like everything in this movie, even Harvey Keitel's character takes his writing partners up to the mountain and they look through the telescope. And he says something along the lines of like, look over there. It doesn't, like, what do you see? She's like, oh, it looks really close. So, well, yeah, that's because you're young. She turns the thing around, and if you look through binoculars or a telescope backwards, it makes things look farther away. She's like, now it looks super far away. He's like, that's what the world looks like when you're old. And because everything, your entire life is sort of behind you. And when you look back, everything just seems so far away. So I think, I just think that this whole movie's point is sort of doing in a very artistic way, showing you how, your perception of being alive is going to change. And you don't really think about that a lot because it happens so slow in real life,
Yeah, sure.
And this movie does a great job of sort of like showing you people in different points of their lives reflecting and dealing with the fact that they are still alive in different ways. I don't think about getting older. I mean, this movie made me think about it, obviously, but like on a day-to-day, and I don't think how my temperament or my energy level or my anything will change, but it will. And I think this movie does a great job at like showing just sort of the way different realistic yet eccentric people act when that happens.
Sure, I could totally see that. I still just question. Now, again, I don't think the film actually teeters into leery old man kind of thing quite. It kind of tiptoes that line and doesn't manage to fall off, which is an amazing balance act. I just don't, that particular scene with Miss Universe wandering around in slow motion naked through a pool says anything revelatory. It's yes, I get it.
No, it's not like the crux of the film. It's not like the oh my god moment. It's
it's not meant to be the oh my god moment.
It's another instance.
It's just another, it's another instance, but it does teeter on that slightly romanticized version of what youth can be. But to be fair, the film does give that character a little bit of a grace moment earlier on where she calls out Paul Dano's character for thinking that she's vapid, and she says, "Listen, I'm
thinking that she's vapid." We're gonna go full circle. Thinking that she's vapid due to the fact that she really liked him in basically an action popcorn flick, not unlike the Avengers.
He played in Mr. Q, the robot movie.
Mr. Q, the robot, is the name of the character, and he basically he says earlier in the film, he's like, one moment of levity, and the only thing I'm going to be remembered for is playing a fucking robot. And then the first thing Miss Universe says to him later in the film, it's like, I loved you as Mr. Q. And then he basically kind of shits on her, sort of trying to be snark and sort of smart, like, basically calling her an idiot. And she fucking snaps back with like I don't even remember. It was just like some really smart hard-hitting shit.
She says something that's really insightful, which is that you think that it's ironic that I enjoyed you because you're in that film. I enjoyed my time as Mrs. Universe. I enjoyed the fact that I took part in that pageant. You don't seem to have enjoyed the fact that the thing you're most remembered. You don't seem to enjoy the thing that you're most remembered for.
Yeah, she says it snarkily. She says, "I enjoyed my time with the Miss Universe pageant. Did you enjoy your time as Mr. Q?" And then she walks away, and he's like,
she walks away, and Mick, I think it's Fred Ballinger, turns to Paul Dano's character and says, "Well, she's no idiot," and he kind of laughs and says, "No, she isn't."
Yep.
And it's, but then later in the film, he actually gets the moment that he's been looking for, which is that a little girl comes up to him and mentions this little indie film that he was in that nobody saw. And I don't think that her scene later on so the film kind of sets up here that she is much more than just a great beauty, to steal this title from Paolo Sorrentino's previous film. But then it has a scene with her where all it does is look at her beauty. And I don't think that the film actually manages to fall off into misogynistic or into getting that balance wrong. It actually feels completely natural within the film, and it doesn't feel too judgmental or anything like that. The director's eye is very, very smart. But I'm just saying that, in a lesser made film, that scene played wholesale as it was would not work. And you could almost see it not working here. And it's remarkable to me that it does work. So yeah, it's sort of, and I can see why you're having issue with me saying this, because you don't think that the film gets into these issues because the film is so well made. And I agree with you. And because these issues aren't what the film is about, but it's hard to for me to dissect what the film is about versus what the film is presenting me, which is rich old men in a resort, basically wrestling with existential crisis, with an existential crisis. I think those things are, given that the fact that the film highlights that there's a working class underneath this whole film, and there's a working class prostitute in the film as well. The fact that the film doesn't address those things is interesting to me at the very least. And it's, I counterbalance that with it's interesting that the film manages to get away with that. And
see, but here's the thing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like it doesn't for you. It sounds to me like because the majority of this podcast has been sort of these things that sort of bothered you about it. Yet you keep going back at the end and saying it still works, it still works, it still works. Well, I don't think it worked for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess maybe the part that doesn't work for me is that question of the sum. I keep using that phrase. Is the film more than the sum of its parts? And I think all of those scenes that I mentioned are really interesting. But to me, the place that this film finally ends at is not that interesting. It's a place where this film ends at. And there's part of me that feels like this film is really, you're talking about how you want to watch this film over and over and over again to try and ascertain what the film really means. And while I appreciate that, I'm not going to do the same thing, because my initial impression, and maybe I will watch it again, but my initial impression of this film is that it's a series of really interesting scenes that dance around the idea of what it means to be at the end of your life rather than the beginning of your life. But it offers to me fairly little revelation or the overall connectiveness of those scenes doesn't really land for me.
Right. I think I might have misspoke then. I don't think that this movie has some sort of revelatory, oh my God, this is the meaning of what it means to get older. I think to think a film has that, or even to think that for the film itself to sort of, if it said that, which it doesn't, would be totally pretentious and bullshit. What I meant to sort of say now that we're coming back around is, I think the film says what it's trying to say very clearly. It's different perspectives, different sort of outlooks at how your perception of you and those around you changes as you age and slowly crawl into a grave. But I don't think there's going to be like, oh, it's totally the point. This is the point. I think the small moments that you say are sort of like don't connect as well and don't have a whole, like, doesn't make the whole thing come together to a cohesive point. I don't think they're trying to. I don't think it's supposed to. I don't think it needs to. Again, I think that email came at a very fortuitous time because this is not a hero's journey movie. This is not something that, like, you keep bringing up, like Michael Caine's story just kind of goes somewhere and it doesn't, whatever, the resolution didn't feel complete or enough for you. I don't think it was meant to. Again, I go back to even the way arguments were treated in this movie. This movie treats things that happen to people a lot like real life. And I don't want to see that all the time in my movies because I like things blowing up and superheroes saving the day. But if every once in a while I like seeing something that, even though it's set in sort of a little sort of, I guess, headspace or sort of a little bit more than normal world, I like seeing characters that interact, have their stories happen, and the conclusions not just be, and they lived happily ever after. Like, it's just like, well, he keeps going. In fact, the last thing I'll say, because we do need to wrap up, we're going a little over, is Michael Caine's character, but at the end, he throughout the entire thing, he's been going to the doctor and, trying to figure out, like, if there's anything wrong with them and blah, blah, blah. And every other character seems to have some sort of health issue one way or the other. And his results come back, and lo and behold, he's fine. And I think that, like, hit the character hard. He's like, after all these years, of on all the shit I've done, good and bad, like, I'm fine, I'm healthy. Like, that's fucking nuts.
Yeah, and I think that might play into the guilt that he has over
over a lot of his life.
Well, essentially abandoning his wife. His wife has probably passed into some form of dementia.
Yep.
And he hasn't visited her in 10 years' time. And, Rachel Weisz has this amazing monologue where she basically outlines every bad deed he did, which summed up, like, essentially ignoring her, ignoring his family in favor of his music, and having affairs multiple times, both with men and women. And it, I think that monologue is poignant, but it seems to happen and then be, it happens like really like in the first third of the movie.
Yep.
And then it doesn't really come back. And Michael Caine revisiting his wife at the end of the film, it's interesting. It's not. To me, the point is not that it. Here's the thing. You keep mentioning that that we're looking for the hero's journey in this film, and I'm not looking for the hero's journey. What I'm looking for is profundity. I'm looking for the film to resonate. For it to actually take an idea that it has and make it powerful for me. And I think the film skirts around a number of really interesting ideas, but it doesn't really become profound for me or revelatory or at a very fundamental, hero's journey kind of way, resolve in any interesting way. It just resolves. And I'm not saying, again,
I will agree with you on all of those points.
I'm not suggesting that, like this is a caliber of film which if these are the bad points I'm making about the film, these are still better than, I would say, 80 to 90% of the films we have reviewed. Like this is a very high art kind of movie, and it's transcendent in its use of cinema as a language. Right. But I will say I left the film feeling a little cold and a little, like, well, okay, there was that. Whereas, for example, a film which plays in the same caliber of cinema, for example, a film like I Am Love, left me contemplating life in a way that I didn't ever expect. And much in the same, and the reason I don't want to hop on this point too much is that I feel that that's how you felt when you watched this movie. And if you did, that's
which
wonderful.
is fine. But the argument is always very interesting when I feel like you're sort of dancing around me because I liked it so much. Which I appreciate. Hold on. And I appreciate, but the points that you've made obviously hit for you, and that's fine. The one thing I'll say is that I'm glad that, for instance, like I think the feeling that I got from this movie based on what you just said from the sort of similar feeling you've gotten from movies in the past. Yeah. I now have had that like, oh shit, like. I think that's why the fact that there's no revelation sort of for the characters at the end or anything like that really works for me, because the revelation isn't going to come from me getting to the end of the film. The revelation is going to come from me, and this is for me, this isn't the movie. It's going to come from me when I watch it a bunch of times later on and keep thinking of new and interesting points that the movie sort of brings up. And maybe the fact that it does not answer them is probably why I really like it. Like, it just keeps posing lots of great questions around a interesting enough story with fantastic characters and things that every human being, whether you're, what man, woman, rich, poor, whatever, everyone's gonna die. Everyone's gonna die. And at some point, people have to come to terms with that no matter where you are. So this is just a very interesting way to sort of kickstart at least my thinking about that. Because I'm not a religious guy.
No. And don't for a second think that I'm tiptoeing around the film because you liked it, because if I really disliked the film, I would take you to task on it. I do think this is a film worthy of your attention and worthy of anyone's attention, and it is a masterful film. It's kind of in the same way, which I feel like Kartik's email was actually really pleasing. It's the same way that I feel about Sicario, which is that I feel like Sicario didn't necessarily work, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
Right.
In fact, it's more excellent than most of the films we talk about. And this is more excellent than most of the films we talk about. It is a superb film and superbly crafted. I personally didn't find, for the reasons I've outlined, that the film resonated with me.
Yeah, which is fine.
And so, if it was, and the thing that I think is more interesting is that if it was more egregious in terms of the way it used female sexuality to discuss a male existentialist crisis, which is what it does with that Miss Universe scene, or the way in which it doesn't address class issues that are, to me, vitally inherent to the nature of the situation that's set up. The way, like the fact that it manages to skirt around that is masterful to me. It is kind of remarkable. I feel like
most of our conversation has been about kind of those two moments, which are so entirely small in the entirety of the film, which I know you were saying that, that if those are the problems and they manages to sort of work around it, that's a good thing. I do feel bad, and I really hope you took to heart our thing in the beginning, dear listeners, of seeing the movie before you listen to this. Yeah. Because I feel like we've gotten caught up in a lot of stuff about this movie that would do someone who has not seen it no service.
Well, and like the one thing I wrote down in my notes is the minutiae of this film, the things that we've kind of like tapped into, are really beautifully done, really interestingly done. Like there's a Buddhist monk who they think can, who's claims to levitate. Right. And one scene later he does, and it is a beautiful moment. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really lovely moment. And there are, scenes of, for example, a couple keep coming to dinner who, like they keep having bets on whether they'll talk to each other, and they don't. In fact, in one scene, she slaps, the woman in the couple slaps him in the face. Then they follow that couple into they see that couple later on wandering through the woods, and they follow them and watch them have sex. And it is a really lovely moment. I don't think that coupled with the central storylines around Mick Foley,
Mick Foley, the wrestler?
Yeah, Mick Foley, the wrestler.
Yeah, so Mankind shows up.
Yeah, Mick Boyle, the filmmaker, and Fred Ballinger, coupled with those minutiae, add up to something greater than the sum of those individual scenes.
Well,
that would be my final thought on the film.
And if I didn't have a hangover, I could prove it.
I do think you should everyone who listens to this podcast should watch this film. I would wholeheartedly recommend watching. Well, at this point, you gotta have watched it by now. Otherwise, you're just listening to two people ramble about something that you have no idea what's going on. But I would wholeheartedly recommend that you watch I Am Love as well, which
I'll check that out.
Did for me what I think this film did for Matt.
And I can't wait to nitpick it in front of you, Shahir.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been the only podcast about youth.
And I'm pretty safe to say that that's true. We are the only podcast that did a podcast about youth, probably.
It's true every time, Shahir.
Of course.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. My work is, I was going to say a lot of cool work is on there as though I was talking about someone else in the third person.
It's cool.
It's
cool. You can say it. Say it's cool.
But we have a cool music video that I'm working on right now with robots that will be coming out shortly. So keep an eye out for that.
Excellent. You can find me
sorry, Matt. You can also reach us, the podcast, to tell us what you think about youth or any other film we reviewed at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at onlymoviepod. We also have a Facebook page, so look us up there.
Yes, you can find me at Matthew Kroll, MatthewKrol.com. Also Skeletor, 4, PREZ on Instagram and Emperor MSK on Twitter. And I would say this. I for the rare small chance that a person has been going through this entire thing and is super confused and hasn't seen the film, and if the normally like these types of movies and Pigeon Sat on a Branch, all these sort of like more, I guess, heady art housey films, I would still say this is a good gateway one.
Sure.
I think it. Who I really want to. I hope he listens to this after the fact. I really want to give this to our friend Vince Arrigo.
Okay, sure.
Because he's my if I had to define like action fucking Marvel head sort of like dude. When it comes to his films, although he does love a good Disney princess tale. Let me tell you, I really want to see what he thinks of this movie.
Sure.
I'm really curious to see what actually everyone does. So send in emails and let us know. Come home.
I'm coming. I'll be home soon, Matt. I miss you.
I miss you too, buddy. Till next time, everybody. See you later.